Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Monica Shah, the seven-figure business coach. Monica, welcome to the program.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
Good. Well, I love when people say I am a business coach that helps people do whatever, because that shows a really good focus. And I love your seven-figure bar, because, you know, why would we want to talk about anything less than the best? So give us a little bit of your background and what led you into coaching and this specific niche that you are focusing on.
Sure. I started out, my first company I started in 2005, my first coaching business, and I jumped in. I had a degree and an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management, and then I went and worked for L'Oreal Paris and as a brand manager. And I thought, you know, with all the marketing and the branding and the MBA and the business experience, I thought I was going to be hot shit. And I left out, and within 12 months of being in business, I was $25,000 in debt. And it wasn't bad debt, it was good debt that went towards paying for the business and paying for skills and tools. But the problem was I wasn't making a dent in the debt. Like, it just kept growing. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this issue where it's like their secret shame is the fact that their credit cards are filling up. Or their secret shame is that even if they're not necessarily incurring debt, they're not generating profit either. So everything's going towards their business, and their lifestyle isn't improving much. And for me, it got to the point where I needed to do other things to support my business. So I started doing things like dog walking and cat sitting and focus groups and selling stuff on eBay. And I was working, close to 80 hours a week just so that I didn't have to work 40 hours a week for someone else. Wow. Which I think is another sort of classic trait of the entrepreneur, to try to make it work, and no matter what. And it got to a point where there was a particular week where I had rented my apartment out on Airbnb for 6 days in a row, and I was leaving that apartment and going home. I got on the subway to go home. I got off the subway stop, and I had 2 bags on my left shoulder and 2 bags on my right shoulder and a bag across my chest and a roller bag that I was carrying. I was literally had become a bag lady schlepping across New York so that I could afford my rent. And I walked up the stairs, and I was excited to get on the elevator. I looked to the right, the elevator was closed. And I was excited to get on the escalator. I'd actually picked this stop because it had an elevator and an escalator. And the escalator was broken that day as well. And I looked up, and there were 4 more flights of stairs to get to street level. It was one of those crazy stops. And I just, at that moment, got really, really tired. And I put my bags down, and then I sat down on the subway floor. Now, you've hit rock bottom when you sit down on a New York subway floor. And I felt the tears kind of come down. And at that point, I got really clear that I had to figure this out, that I was done, that I was tired, and that I had to figure out how I was going to make a dent in my debt, how I was going to start to create money from my business, and how I was able to really live life with joy, because the woman that had come out of business school and out of L'Oreal was confident and self-assured, and the woman that was sitting on the subway floor was not that and was everything else. And I spent the next 12 months working it out, figuring it out. I went back and hired business coaches and marketing coaches and mentors, and what I got clear on was that I had been focusing on everything but generating money in my business. So what I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, and what I had done, is number one, didn't have a good relationship with money, so I would avoid looking at it, looking at my numbers, looking at my conversion rates, looking at revenue, looking at debt, looking at what was working and not working. And because of that, I would end up doing things that weren't revenue-generating activities. So I would spend a whole day working, but those activities weren't contributing to my top line and definitely not my bottom line. And what I got clear on is that until I shifted my relationship with money and really focused on generating revenue and doing revenue-generating activities regularly, nothing was going to change in my business. And that was a big wake-up call for me, that you could work 12 hours a day and still not have enough money in the bank, that you could work 12 hours a day and still not grow your income. And when I figured out those pieces, I created my 5-step system to mastering cash flow. And when I really started to follow those steps, things started to shift. I was able to pay off the $25,000 in debt. I put $12,000 in the bank that first year. And then every year after that, we've increased our revenue. We became a 7-figure coaching company in 2013. And from there, what I have really gotten clear on is that it is one thing to be an entrepreneur or a business owner. It's another thing to be an entrepreneur or business owner who's really focused on generating sustainable income and being able to have money in your savings account and being able to create a lifestyle for yourself. And that's really where my focus is on teaching people the skills to generate money and to keep it, because I found that most of the people that I attract and most people in my tribe, their desire is to make the world a better place. And in order to do that, every movement to do that needs money. So I'm really proud and excited now to help people generate that and to see the change in the world as a result of that.
Well, where do we start after that? That's just awesome, huge story. The couple things that jump out is just clarity, and then you just kind of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. Here's something that you brought a couple points up, and I want to tie them together and see what you think of this. You mentioned top line and bottom line revenue, and you mentioned entrepreneur and business owner. And it made me wonder and think, sometimes a business owner is not very entrepreneurial, like creative, and sometimes an entrepreneur is not really a business owner, meaning knowing your numbers. So I think that's a really interesting contrast to think about. And in knowing your numbers, I think a lot of people, entrepreneurs, business owners, feel like we're slaying it because look at this top line revenue number, but they're not paying attention to the profit margin and they're spending more than they're making. And then at the end of the day, year, whatever, it's like, oh, I thought I was doing so well. So you can't only focus on just one, and you can't only be just the creative entrepreneur, and you can't only just be the business owner looking at the numbers because you're missing out on opportunities.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And in fact, in my world, entrepreneur and business owner are similar terms, right? They're interchangeable. But when I ask my clients the same question, I said, would you rather call yourself an entrepreneur or a business owner? How do you think of yourself? They made that very same distinction. In fact, many of them said to me, Monica, when I came to you, I thought of myself as an entrepreneur. And now that I've learned things like how to look at my numbers and how to do my marketing plan and how to really build my business, I feel like I'm graduating into being a real business owner. What's great about that is that when you decide to leap off and start making cupcakes or start making products, or let's say you go to a school where you learn to be a naturopath or a acupuncturist or even a lawyer, they don't teach you, they teach you your skill. They don't teach you how to generate money and how to run a business. And so even having people see the distinctions is important because it has you realize that while it's fun and creative to be an entrepreneur, you may need more. And honestly, people don't even think of, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I don't really I don't think about my profit. I would say you're in the majority because most people don't think about the word profit, which is what is left over. But what they do think about is what can you do with your money, right? Like, so can you take a real vacation? Can you afford to send your child to a special school if they need it? Can you bring in extra childcare? Can you, not worry about paying the sitter for 5 hours so you can go on a date night? Like, these are things that we should be getting from our businesses, and many of us aren't because every dollar is going back into the company.
You mentioned money type. What is that, and what should we know about noticing that within our own self?
So this is my first step of my system, and it's about improving your relationship with money. Now, I have entire workshops and programs on this, but really what it comes down to is so for me, for example, I was avoiding looking at my numbers. I was letting mail pile up. I was avoiding sending out invoices. I know my clients do things like give discounts when they don't want to, barter when they really don't feel like it, avoid sending out information about, raising their prices. All of these relate to voices in your head that I call money voices. And these are voices that occurred, they sort of got implanted in your head. I like to pretend or say that there's this round table, like a conference table in your head, and all your money voices are sitting around it. And they all were created there based on an experience that you had from the age of 0 to 7. Like everything that you saw, heard, and experienced around money from the age of 0 to 7 became a money voice. Those are your primary money voices. And then there's more money voices that are added as you have moments with money as you get older as well, like things like traumatic moments or even happy moments with money. All of this dictates your relationship with money, and I've come up with 4 different money types that describe this relationship. And you can be any of the types, and most people are a combination of them. I'm going to go through them quickly, and then it'll just give you insight, to maybe what type you are and how you relate to it. The first type is an avoider. So if you're an avoider, you usually let the bills really pile up. You haven't really been looking at your numbers. If I were to ask you numbers like revenue or expenses and it's not near tax time, likely is that you're not going to know them. And in fact, for most avoiders, they feel like if they look at their numbers, it's bad luck or it's really hard because there's a lot of self-judgment that goes into looking at their numbers. So the problem with being an avoider is that you end up working twice as hard or 3 times as hard as you need to and worrying a lot about your business because you're not really looking at your numbers. And so if your mom comes to town and you want to take Friday afternoon off to be with her, you really don't know if you can because you have no evaluation mechanism to tell you it's okay to stop working or you've done enough that week. And that is the main problem with being an avoider. I find that avoiders carry this sort of feeling of having to work all the time and not really knowing, not being able to stop even in their minds while they're spending time with their friends and with their family, which would be helped by actually knowing things like, oh, I'm doing great this week. Like I've actually surpassed my goal, or we're doing really great in terms of hitting our numbers and what that feels like and looks like to be able to carry that amount of satisfaction.
That's a aspect even just right there that carries just a big mental weight. Haven't you found that as well?
Oh, it's true. I mean, it's interesting because if you're the aspect of avoiding, whatever you're avoiding is a mental weight. Whatever you resist persists. Yeah. So there's something about this that, just the very act of not looking at it is causing, is causing the weight as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what's the next one?
So the next one is spenders. Now, spenders are folks that spend. They are usually, you're a spender if you usually pick up the check at dinner, that you love spending money. usually my spenders, when I'm in a room and I'm like actually seeing people, spenders are proud to be spenders.
Yep.
You're usually generous, and in your giving and in your spending, you believe money should be spent. It drives you mad when people, have to divide up a check or nickel and diming each other. And there's a generosity that lives inside of a spender, and a desire to shift and change the world and can make it a place where people live better lives. The problem with being a spender is that often you have really high credit card bills that you can't pay off, or you feel guilty when you're spending, and you just can't keep up with your own spending. Sometimes there's shame and hiding in being a spender, in terms of not telling family members or partners what you're spending or what the bill looks like. And also, sometimes as a spender, you spend for reasons other than the fact that you need it. So I know that whenever I go into disappointment or disillusion in my business, I will throw money at the problem. So I'll try to buy personal growth things or books or products or programs, even if I know I don't have time to go through them because I'm in desperation. And so oftentimes you spend because you're hungry or lonely or desperate or sad or fearful or upset, and it can lead to unnecessary spending. I also know some spenders that just spend without thinking about it. So you'll buy something without researching it. You'll forget to return things, and so that can add up over time as well. The beauty of the problem with being a spender, the thing that makes us out of balance is this low-grade chronic shame that comes with spending things that aren't working, with carrying too much credit card debt, with feeling like you're always sort of just under being able to pay yourself. And that can lead eventually to just exhaustion with this whole thing. And then the next type. The next type is a saver. So this is the opposite of a spender. You know that you're a saver if you love, my favorite spender activities are when I go to events, I know someone's a spender if they'll come up to me and they'll be like, can I just show you my MIDS account? Or my QuickBooks online, or, the latest savings app. They love to look at their money. They love to log into their bank account and see how everything's doing. They love to see progress. They love tracking. Often you're also a saver if you don't have debt, or if you do have debt, but you know exactly to the penny how and when you're going to pay it off, and you pay it off every month. The other trait of being a saver that can be, throw you out of balance a bit is if you are constantly, you'd rather save your money than actually invest in an opportunity or invest in health. So I had a classic saver client come to me, and she was at one of my masterminds, and she said, my back really hurts, and I've tried this, and that to fix it, and it's not going away. And someone else in the mastermind said, oh, why don't you try this doctor? And when she found out that the doctor was not on her insurance plan, she wasn't going to go to him. And when we talked about that, she had the money. She just would rather be in pain than spend the money. And I think that's a very classic saver outcome. So what I see with savers is that they're working really hard, and they're tolerating a lot, tolerating late hours and early mornings and pain and exhaustion and not knowing what to do. And in a lot of cases, they're not growing as fast as they could, all because they're not willing to spend. And then the fourth type is a martyr. So martyrs are folks that would rather barter than actually charge what they are worth. These are, you're a martyr if you constantly take your prices down, or you haven't taken your prices up in years, or if you would just rather, if you don't accept money for what you do, you're still doing a lot of free work. A great example of a martyr is one of my clients who would send invoices out, and she would give people 20% off, 30% off, and she would never even tell them. So they had no idea they were even getting savings, and she felt so guilty about charging them that she would just take the prices down.
Wow.
So I have clients that, don't don't charge at all or don't send an invoice for months and months because they feel so bad about asking for money for what they do and having that exchange happen. And normally what's going on here, if you're a martyr, is that you've got a really strong money voice in your head. And that money voice is saying things to you like, you shouldn't be charging, or you're not worth this. Or if you charge a lot of money, then something bad will happen. And so you want to start to look at what that voice is, where that voice came from, and how you can reform and reframe that voice to actually start supporting you instead of always getting in your way when it comes time to asking for money.
Sure. Yeah, it makes total sense. What's number 5?
There's 4. There's just 4 types.
Got it.
But yeah, so that's the 4th. That's the last one. And you know what? Do you see yourself in any of those types?
I think you would say that you hear this a lot, that you see elements and aspects of many of them in yourself, and you're like, well, I kind of feel this way, but not all the way, and I kind of feel this way, but not all the way. So I think, and then there's another thing that I think you've observed, which is you can start off as one and then kind of merge into another if you don't pay attention.
It's true. I mean, I started off as an avoider, and I still have avoider tendencies.
Sure.
And that's kind of what led to all of this, the work that I do with money today. But what's interesting is when I got a handle on it and built a team around it, I have a bookkeeper and an accountant and a client manager now and people that actually support me to look at the numbers. I then became a saver. Yeah. And I started to really love being able to look at my bank account and see the money growing there. And then there are times in both areas, there are positives to both, and then there are negatives to both as well that I have to be careful of. Being an avoider can be great because it allows you to live in a visionary place and be really creative without the confines of having the numbers. Being a saver can be great because it allows you to security. So there's pros and cons to all of them. But,
yep.
I want to just give some suggestions on managing any of the types. Would that be a good thing?
Let's take one quick point on each one, and then we'll wrap up with, you mentioned your marketing calendar, and I want to make sure that people know how to get a copy of that for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually just going to give 2 suggestions for all of them, no matter what type you are. And the first is obviously there's a lot more where this comes from, and a lot more suggestions. But for today, the place to start is, number 1, have a money date. And what I mean by that is sit down with your money every single week, whether it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes, maybe it's an hour the first time you do it, and look at everything. Look at your credit card statements, look at your bank accounts, look at your goals, look at your conversion rates, look at your profit numbers, look at all your numbers each week. Even if it's not growing, what you resist persists. What you look at grows. So you'll start to see a shift just in really starting to build a relationship with those numbers. So that's the first piece. And the second piece is, for those of you that are savers and spenders, one of the great things to do is to start to look at spending a certain amount of money each month that is for a particular goal for yourself. So you want to sit down and be really honest with yourself. Where are you struggling? Is it team? Is it mentorship? Is it needing more time? Wherever that struggle is for you, start to allocate a certain amount of money that goes towards that each month. And know that the more you let go of the money and you're real clear about where it's going, the more likely it's going to come back in your direction.
I love it. That's awesome. And so how can people learn more about yourself and your marketing calendar, and what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah. So, once you understand your money types, people then say to me, okay, great, Monica, I get it. I get why things have been harder for me. But what do I do next? What are the activities I need to be doing to generate revenue? And that's actually why I created my marketing calendar. It lists the top 6 revenue-generating activities and the frequency in which you should be doing them, whether it's once a week or a month or quarter or year, and it explains them. And so that's a great place to start. And you can pick that up at revenuebreakthrough.com/marketing calendar, revenuebreakthrough.com/marketing calendar. And if you're interested in getting a listing of the money types, you can also get that at revenuebreakthrough.com/money magnet, revenuebreakthrough.com/money magnet. So it's either /marketing calendar or /money magnet, and it's all one word. And then to reach me, you can reach me at revenuebreakthrough.com. That's my website. Our email is support@revenuebreakthrough.com, and you can also give us a call at 1-800-208-0913. We're here to support any business owner that is finding that they're struggling with the piece around really getting their business to grow and generating more money.
Awesome. Well, Monica, thank you so much for stopping by. You just got such clarity in what you have discovered and how you help your clients, and it just really shines through. So thank you so much. I appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.